Everything you think you know about the Roman Empire belongs to the wrong century. The marble forums, the cold emperors, the legions on parade, all of that came later. The Rome that lived in the years a carpenter's son was walking dusty roads in Galilee was something stranger, hungrier, and far more human than the postcard. We rebuild these forgotten worlds, frame by frame, training AI on ancient frescoes, coins, and ruins to turn faded evidence into living scenes you can almost smell. Dawn over the Tiber. A low river mist clings to the bricks of the Aventine, and the first carts are already groaning toward the Forum Boreum, the cattle market where the air tastes of straw and fresh manure. A baker named Eurysaces is up before the sun, his hands grey with rye flour, kneading dough in a courtyard that still survives in stone outside the Porta Maggiore today. He bakes for a city that never stops chewing. Rome, in this exact moment, is the largest city the world has ever built. Around 1 million people are crammed inside its walls. To feel that, picture every person you have ever stood next to in a queue, every stranger on every train, every face in every crowd of your life, and stack them all into a few square miles of brick. That's the density, that's the noise, and the noise is constant. Iron-rimmed wheels grinding stone, donkeys protesting, the slap of wet linen on a fuller's tub, Greek, Aramaic, Punic, Latin, all braided together like rope. The poet Juvenal will later complain that no one in Rome can sleep unless they are very rich, because the streets keep screaming long after dark. Carts are banned by daylight, so the city gets its deliveries at midnight. The wealthy doze on rooftops, the poor doze through the racket because they have no other choice. Reign of Augustus. He calls himself Princeps, first citizen, but everyone in the eastern provinces already whispers a word that will outlive him. Caesar. He has just rebuilt the city in a quiet, surgical way. He famously boasts that he found Rome a town of brick and leaves it a city of marble. The boast is half true. The temples gleam, the slums still ooze. Step 3 streets back from the Forum and the marble vanishes. There stand the insulae, Rome's apartment blocks, 6 and 7 stories high, leaning against each other like tired drunks. They are made of timber, mud brick, and prayer. They burn often. They collapse more often than the Senate would like to admit. A man named Crassus, a generation earlier, made part of his fortune by buying buildings while they were still on fire. I still find that astonishing. Augustus, who has watched his city light up the night sky too many times, finally creates the Vigiles, 7 cohorts of freedmen who patrol the streets after dark with buckets, axes, vinegar-soaked blankets, and a kind of giant pump called a siphon. They are firefighters and night police rolled into one. Their boots echo on the stones long after the wine shops have shuttered. If you smell smoke in the Subura at 3 in the morning, it is the vigils you pray for first, and your landlord second. Inside one of those tenements, a Syrian widow lights a small clay lamp shaped like a foot. The wick smells of cheap olive oil. Her ceiling is someone else's floor. Her floor is someone else's ceiling. There is no plumbing here. The chamber pot will be emptied out the window before sunrise, and a city law will pretend that this never happens. This is the Rome the Gospels never describe, but always assume. Far to the east, in a province the Romans only half understand, a tax census is being organized. Judea. The governor's name is Quirinius, a careful Roman administrator with a face we know only from coins. He counts heads because the empire counts everything. Grain, soldiers, olive trees, souls. Every line on every scroll feeds the belly of the city we just walked through. Rome eats the world to stay alive. The taxes themselves are layered like onion skin. There is the tributum capitis, a head tax on every adult in the province. There is the tributum soli, a tax on the land itself. There are customs duties at every harbour, every bridge, every mountain pass. The collectors are called publicani, and people detest them in the same tone everyone in every century has used for tax collectors. The Gospels do not invent that resentment, they simply record it. The roads make it possible. By the year of the carpenter's birth, a network of paved highways stretches across 3 continents: the Via Appia, the Via Egnatia, the Via Domitia. Add them all up and you reach roughly 80,000 kilometers of stone. That's twice around the planet. A letter sent from Antioch can reach the Palatine in under a month. A whisper of rebellion travels even faster. And whispers travel constantly. Walk into the Subura at midday, the working-class district squeezed between the Quirinal and the Esquiline. The smell hits first. Garum, the fermented fish sauce Romans pour on absolutely everything, ripening in open vats. Then sweat. Then wood smoke from the bath furnaces. A barber called Licinus is shaving a senator's client by the doorway of his shop, gossiping about a chariot race at the Circus Maximus that nearly tore the city apart last week. The Greens won. The Blues are already plotting next month. Romans care about chariot factions the way modern people care about football clubs, except with more shouting and slightly more knife fights. The circus itself seats 250,000 spectators. Read that again. A single stadium in a single city, 2,000 years ago, swallowing more people than most modern arenas can dream of. The most successful charioteer in Roman memory, a Lusitanian called Gaius Appuleius Diocles, will retire with prize money equivalent, by some modern reconstructions, to billions in today's currency. He starts as a slave. He ends as the highest-paid athlete in human history. The empire could be cruel, and the empire could be ridiculous, often on the same afternoon. Above Licinus's head, painted in red on a cracked wall, is a campaign slogan for a local magistrate. Election graffiti. Real surviving examples have been pulled from the ash of Pompeii, including one in which a group of late-night drinkers earnestly endorse a candidate, and another in which the local prostitutes do the same. Roman democracy, in its final flickers, was loud, vulgar, and extremely public. By mid-afternoon, half the city has gone to bathe. The thermae are not just baths, they are the social engine of Rome. You strip in the apoditerium, sweat in the caldarium, plunge into the cold frigidarium, then drift through colonnades where philosophers argue business deals are sealed, dinner invitations are exchanged, and a slave with a small bronze strigil scrapes the oil and dust from your back. Senators bathe beside fishmongers. Augustus himself, when his health permits, prefers a simple soak. There is no other room in Roman life where the empire's classes touch each other so casually, so often, and so naked. News travels along these walls as fast as it travels along the roads. Every morning, a hand-copied bulletin called the Acta Diurna is posted in the Forum. Births, court rulings, omens, gladiator results, a senator's scandal, a fire on the Caelian. Romans read it the way modern people scroll a feed at breakfast, except the gossip is chiseled into whitewashed wood. We know about the Acta because Cicero complained in writing that someone kept stealing his copy. The empire is still pretending to be a republic. The Senate still meets. Consuls are still elected. But everyone, from the slave hauling water on the Caelian to the perfumed night on the Palatine, knows the truth. One man holds the reins. He just smiles politely about it. That man, Augustus, is now in his 70s. His face is thin, his teeth are bad. He wears thick-soled sandals to look taller than he is, and a wool undershirt because he is always cold. The most powerful human being on earth is, in private, a slightly anxious old man who reads in bed and worries about his stepson. Honestly, I don't know what I expected when I first read his letters, but it wasn't this. Even the calendar over his head is a recent invention. His adoptive father, Julius Caesar, only reformed the Roman year a few decades earlier, adding a leap day, fixing the months, dragging Rome out of a chaotic lunar drift in which festivals had begun arriving in the wrong season. The month Sextilis is renamed in Augustus's honor while he is still alive. You write that month on a calendar today, and you are still using a Roman emperor's title. That tiny ghost in your phone is older than you think. His stepson is Tiberius, hard, brooding, brilliant, and unhappy. He will inherit everything in the year 14, when Augustus draws his last breath at Nola, reportedly asking his friends if he had played his part well in the comedy of life. The line is probably polished by later historians, but it has the ring of a man who knew exactly what he had been doing for 50 years. Quick question. Pause the video for a heartbeat. If you had to live one ordinary day in this Rome, would you walk it as a senator or as a baker? Comments below. Be honest. Tiberius takes the throne. The mood of the city shifts. He retreats to the island of Capri, ruling Rome from a cliff over the Bay of Naples. The capital is left in the hands of a man named Sejanus, the commander of the Praetorian Guard. Sejanus is ambitious, cunning, and utterly without sentiment. For a few years, he is, in everything but name, the master of Rome. The historian Tacitus describes him as a man with a body trained for hardship and a mind trained for ruin. Senators learn to walk past his door without making eye contact. It is during these years, somewhere between roughly 26 and 36 of the Common Era, that a man called Pontius Pilatus is appointed Prefect of Judea. We have his name carved into a single weather-worn limestone block discovered in 1961 in the ruins of Caesarea Maritima. Until that stone surfaced, some scholars quietly wondered if he had ever existed at all. Imagine being one of the archaeologists who turned that block over in the sand. Imagine reading those 4 Latin letters, Pila, and realizing the Gospels had just been touched by stone. Pilate is not a glamorous figure. He is a mid-level Roman administrator from the equestrian class, posted to a difficult, pious, complicated province. He governs from a coastal city by the sea, but during major Jewish festivals he travels inland to Jerusalem, just in case the crowds turn restless. The crowds often do. Around him moves an auxiliary cohort of perhaps 500 soldiers, not Italians, but mostly local recruits and Samaritans, men who speak Greek with rough edges and Latin with an accent. Their helmets are dented. Their tunics smell of leather, sweat, and the cheap wine ration the army hands out twice a day. A centurion named Cornelius, the Gospels remember the name, and the rank is real, would have looked nothing like a Hollywood Roman. He looks like a tired professional with a sunburned neck, a small bronze whistle on a thong, and a wife somewhere in Caesarea waiting for his next leave. This is the Rome that touches the story everyone half remembers from 100 Christmas pageants. Not Rome in togas, Rome in receipts, Rome in soldiers' boots crunching across a hill outside Jerusalem because a junior governor needs to keep the peace before Passover. Rome in the bored handwriting of a clerk filing yet another provincial report. Back in the capital, the city grinds on. The aqueducts are being extended. The Aqua Virgo opens under Augustus, and its water still flows today into the Trevi Fountain, where tourists toss coins without knowing they are drinking from a 2,000-year-old pipe. The Pantheon you can visit on a rainy Tuesday in modern Rome is not Augustus's original, that one burned, but the inscription above its porch still bears the name of his loyal general, Marcus Agrippa. Walk under it. The lettering has not changed since the carpenter's lifetime. Religion runs through the whole city like a second water system. Every household has a small shrine called a lararium, painted bright red and yellow, where the family gods watch over the cooking pots. The Vestal virgins, 6 women chosen as children, tend the eternal flame in the forum, and if it ever goes out, Romans believe the city itself will fall. They are sworn to 30 years of chastity. In return, they enjoy more legal rights than almost any other woman in the empire. They can own property, they can write wills, they can save a condemned prisoner simply by passing him on the street. A small mercy hidden inside an ironclad system. A young woman named Antonia Minor lives on the Palatine in these years. She is the niece of Augustus, the mother of the future emperor Claudius, and one of the most respected women in the city. She wakes before dawn, prays at her household shrine, a small wooden cabinet of family ancestors, and then begins her day of weaving, letter writing, and quiet political maneuvering. Roman matriarchs do not appear often in the school textbooks, but the empire runs on their ledgers. Her household includes dozens of slaves. So does almost every Roman household above the poverty line. Slavery is the engine no one mentions in the marble inscriptions. Roughly 1 in 3 people inside the walls of Rome at this moment is unfree. Some are tutors with Greek philosophy on their tongues. Some are exhausted bodies in the silver mines of Hispania who will not see another spring. Same empire, same year. 2 utterly different lives. Some of them buy their way out. A freedman wears a soft felt cap called a pileus the day he walks free, and from then on, he is a citizen. Almost. He can vote. He can own a shop. His children, born after his manumission, will be Romans without an asterisk. Many of the wealthiest merchants in the city are former slaves with shrewd eyes and long memories. Walk past a tomb on the Via Appia today, and the inscription you read may belong to a man who was once property and ended a millionaire. The Mediterranean is now a Roman lake. They call it Mare Nostrum, our sea. Grain ships from Egypt creak into the harbour at Ostia. Spanish olive oil arrives in clay amphorae stamped with the names of estates we have actually excavated, layer upon layer, in a hill of broken pots called Monte Testaccio that still rises above modern Rome like a bruise on the city. 8 kilometers around, made entirely of smashed ancient containers. A garbage heap that became a hill that became a neighborhood. The empire produced rubbish on a scale that geology now records. The 30s of the 1st century. Tiberius's reign is darkening. Sejanus has overreached, and his story ends on the steps of the Senate. Tiberius himself fades on Capri in the year 37. A young man named Gaius, nicknamed Caligula by his father's soldiers when he was a toddler, inherits the empire. The crowds cheer, the crowds will regret it. But that is another century unfolding. In the year we have been walking through, the dust is still settling on a hill outside Jerusalem. A traveling preacher's followers are scattered, frightened, hiding in upper rooms. A Roman soldier has already gone home and forgotten the name on his daily report. A clerk in Caesarea has already filed the scroll. In a few decades, that scroll will be more important than any treaty Augustus ever signed. No one alive in the forum that morning knows it. The flower sellers near the temple of Vesta open their stalls. A Vestal virgin tends the sacred flame that has burned, by tradition, since the founding of the city. A senator named Lucius Vitellius, yes, the future emperor's father, walks under a portico scrolls under one arm, calculating votes. The fish market opens. The bread comes out of Euryces's ovens, still steaming. Rome wakes up to another perfectly ordinary day. And somewhere, in the back of a dusty provincial archive, a name has been written down for the first time, and not yet erased. That is the Rome the Gospels share a calendar with. Not the Rome of HBO dramas, not the Rome of textbook chapter headings. A real breathing, sweating, gossiping, scheming, hungry city of bricklayers, widows, slave tutors, midnight cart drivers, and tired old emperors in thick wool socks. A city that thought it was eternal and was, in some quiet, stubborn way, absolutely right. 2,000 years on, you can still drink its water, still walk its stones, still read its graffiti. The story moved on. The streets did not. That's where we'll leave it tonight. We're the small team behind Mystique History, and every script you hear is research first, wonder second, and whispered to you third. Tell us in the comments, which forgotten figure from this century should walk into the light next? Whose face do you want us to lift out of the dust? Stay close. The work only gets sharper, the worlds only get closer, and the past, we promise, only gets louder.